Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the second edition of the Meet the Practitioner series. Today I have the great pleasure to welcome Ms. Keven Duff. Keven is a teacher and a practitioner in Reiki and also in Nutripuncture, and she comes all the way from Hong Kong. And she's going to share with us her experience with Nutripuncture. So thank you very much and welcome, Keven.
Thank you, Valerie. It's really lovely to be here.
Yes. So Keven, you have a scientific background, and can you tell me more about your story and how you came about to practice Nutripuncture?
So my background is actually in biochemistry and biomedical anthropology, and throughout my life I've been interested in health, and particularly complementary health. And so my main thing that I do is I teach Reiki seminars. And we have many people who come to those classes who have very serious health issues. And the result of that is that I am always studying other modalities to see if there's anything that might be an additional support to help with those people. So quite a few years ago, I guess it's almost 9 years ago, when you first introduced Nutripuncture to Singapore, I was in that very first class. I took that class. I have to say that initially, certainly it interested me, the Nutripuncture, but I wasn't that impressed with it. I didn't have any personal experiences that were life-changing at that point. And one of the modalities that I've studied is Chinese medicine and acupuncture. And so initially I was using the Nutripuncture as a form of acupuncture. As you know, we sometimes call Nutripuncture acupuncture without needles.
That's correct.
So when clients would come to me, in addition to what I was already doing, I might give them a bit of Nutripuncture to support in that way. But it was about a year after that that I had the opportunity to meet Dr. Patrick Verret, the founder of Nutripuncture. And it's through him that I began to see a bigger picture with Nutripuncture and really understand the power and the potential behind Nutripuncture. Specifically, he worked with me personally to help address an issue that I had never been able to overcome no matter what I did. And that was the death of my mother when I was 17 years of age. And actually, at the time that my mother died, I said, I died too. And for the next 30 years, I was never able to resolve that grief, the mourning that I felt. When I would talk about my mother, I would feel myself choke up a little bit. I was very tearful. And as soon as Dr. Verret met me, he said, oh, this is not correct. And so he began to work with me. And I really didn't understand what he was doing at the time. But the result of that was I was finally and completely free of all of that grief, all of that mourning. I could correctly recognize the death of my mother. And it was at that point that I began to understand the true value that Nutripuncture holds. I started to study with a lot more interest. I went to other levels. In fact, I took every possible opportunity to learn as much as I could about Nutripuncture. And I began to use it on these other levels with my clients. So although I've studied something like 200 different modalities over the years, I look for certain things with modalities, and they tend to become the ones I like the most. So I look for modalities that are fast, extremely effective, have consistent results, work with a wide number of people over a wide range of issues. And Nutripuncture fits all of those criteria from my point of view. And I just feel that Nutripuncture fulfills a block that nothing else fills in. And what I mean by that is, for example, Reiki is life force energy. And of course, that's fundamental to everything. Without life force energy, healing simply can't take place. But where Nutripuncture fits is that it provides the blueprint or the underlying information and the self-regulation of the vital currents of the body. It's like updating your software programs, okay, or downloading an improved blueprint. I don't think there's any other modality that really does that as fast, as effectively, and in such a targeted way as Nutripuncture does. Nutripuncture holds for people.
Well, thank you.
The other thing that I really like about Nutripuncture is that it's not just emotional. Yes, it works fantastically to help us to digest some of the traumas that we might experience in life, miscarriage, a death, an abortion, a divorce, perhaps a rape, things like that. And I've worked with many clients to help them to resolve those issues so that they can fully digest them, learn whatever lessons they need to learn from them, and then move on with freedom. But I also, and this appeals to my scientific background, we can use Nutripuncture to very specifically and pointedly address a lack of information within the body or a faulty blueprint. Perhaps our blueprint has been distorted, we didn't inherit a good blueprint, or it may be that life events have caused a problem with the blueprint, like a big accident, something of that sort, surgery, something of that sort. And I enjoy working with Nutripuncture because we become a little bit like detectives, and we're always looking at where that information is missing. And with Nutripuncture, it's not guessing. We can actually test, find out if a person has good information or not. If they don't, then through the Nutripuncture, we have the potential to restore and improve blueprint. So to share an example of that with you, years ago I was teaching one of the first classes in Australia, and we had a gentleman, and I know he's comfortable with me sharing his name. His name is Trevor. Trevor is in his 70s. He came to the class, and it was clear that there was something not right with Trevor. His voice was very weak. He was very hunched over. He looked like he was very uncomfortable in his body. So I asked him what was going on. And what he shared is that his doctor had diagnosed very severe osteoporosis. And in fact, his doctor had warned him that any fall or blow, he could break a bone. It was that severe. And he said shortly after that, he was out riding his bike, and he was broadsided by a car and thrown many meters through the air, and he had multiple broken bones. He was hospitalized for some time after that, and he had a lot of pain. It was very difficult for him. The healing was slow. So when he came to the class, he was still responding to that. And so the first thing that came into my mind was a sequence that Dr. Vere recommends that most people take at some point. It's called bone trauma. Yeah. And bone trauma releases shock from the system. Now, that can be some emotional shocks, but also very much physical shocks, not just shock to the bone, but to the system as a whole. Things like a whiplash, a dentistry, a forceps delivery as a child, the various falls and blows we might experience over the course of a lifetime. So that came into my mind, and I gave it to Trevor, and immediately when he took it, he suddenly straightened up, and his voice became very resonant. Everybody in the class was stunned, and even he was stunned. He couldn't believe the difference that took place in his body. So he liked Nutripuncture after that. He got very convinced, and he came to see me as a private client. So we work with various sequences to support his healing process. But one of the things that he tested that he really needed was better bone information. And we have a sequence called bone nutrition, which restores that healthy information so bones know how to be healthy bones. And Trevor took that sequence for about 3 months. So he told me that about a year later, he had to go back to the doctor for something, and while he was there, his doctor said, let's do another scan and see how much you have deteriorated. Now, the doctor was a little bit negative about it because Trevor had refused all the medications the doctor wanted to give him. He didn't want to take them when the doctor had originally diagnosed him. And after the scan, the doctor came back and he said, you must have been eating tons of cheese and yogurt and dairy. And Trevor, in fact, had not changed his diet, was on the same diet, had not really made any major lifestyle changes. What he said to me was the only thing that was different was he had taken the Nutripuncture, and there was a measurable increase in his bone density. We even have the scans for that and the information about that. Now, he told me that it was roughly a year after that he had to go back to the doctor again and yet another scan, and he had an even further increase in his bone density.
That's amazing.
Yes.
That's fantastic.
So once the body has a very good blueprint, it has the potential to restore itself at different levels. Some people, the issues are very straightforward. The things get cleaned up very rapidly. The healing is really very rapid. For other people, it's a very complex situation. Yes. It's built up through a lifetime. It's like unraveling a tangled ball of thread, and so sometimes we will do this bit, and then we do that bit, and then another bit, and we need to keep exploring until we find the exact key, which will turn things around. There are very few fully native English-speaking Nutripuncture teachers, and so it was after a while that I recognized really there's a great need for that if Nutripuncture is going to be spreading into the English-speaking world. In fact, one of the most common questions that I get from people is, if Nutripuncture is so wonderful, why have I not heard of it before? And my response to that is that very simply, there wasn't a lot that was translated into English, and so people in the English-speaking world don't know about it. Whereas in France and Italy, it's much more widely recognized. Even the government recognizes it in Italy. Because there was that lack, that's why I decided that I was willing to begin to teach. And we have students that come from every possible background coming to Nutripuncture. So there are health professionals. We've had medical doctors take the training. We have had nurses take the training, physios take the training. But a lot of people who come are housewives, people who are retired, younger people. I've had some teenagers come to the class. They just want to support the family. So you don't have to have any kind of science or medical background to be able to do the Nutripuncture. And there are a couple of basic classes. Once people take those 2 basic classes, in fact, at that point, they will be equipped to support themselves or family members with any symptom, whether it's an emotional symptom or it is a physical symptom. They can support themselves and others. So that it's exciting. But the other thing which is very exciting about Nutripuncture is how fast it is. Truly, I don't know any other modality that is as instantaneous as Nutripuncture. To give you an example of this, I had a free lecture here in Singapore, and I was asking for volunteers, and a man came up, and I asked him what did he want to work on. And he shared that he had broken his arm about a year previously. It had healed well. He'd had physio, but he said every time he turned the hand, there was still pain. And so I asked him exactly where, and he pointed to a place. And because I do know some of the meridian pathways, I recognized that was on the lung meridian. And so I gave him yin and yang, which is a general cellular regulator. And then I gave him the Nutri-20, which is for the lung meridian. And I asked him to check again. He was going, but doesn't it take time? I said, no, just check. And he turns, and he's like, oh, I can't believe it. All the pain's gone. So people just, it's hard for them to take in that essentially we are energetic. And Nutripuncture is working on the energy aspects of the body. And the energy from the human point of view, electromagnetic energy, it's instantaneous information, so it's incredibly fast. You don't have to wait. There's not a long delay. You know pretty quickly if this was a good choice, not a good choice, and so on. So I like that aspect of it. And Nutripuncture focuses on cellular communication, and specifically on the vitality of the cell membranes, because the cell membranes are the doorway into the cell. You know, we receive the nutrition, the oxygen into the cell, and also discharging waste. But the cellular membrane also emits light and electromagnetic energy, and it's part of the communication system of the body. The cells talk to one another, and they need to work in harmony. So under stress, our cell membranes, that little electrical charge or potential on the cell membrane is often not optimal.
Yes.
And so with Nutripuncture, we can turn those cell membranes on very, very quickly. We can also find out if someone is having good cellular vitality or they're not. And so something I think is very important for anybody's healing process or well-being is to restore proper cellular membrane charges and vitality. When we do that, often people find that immediately their energy level comes up. Their immune system functions better. They feel more alert. The brain gets switched on. Anyone who's energy sensitive usually notices an instantaneous change when you do that. Now, not everybody has equal sensitivity, so I can't say across the board everybody is aware of that, but many, many people notice a change as soon as you get the cell membranes oscillating or vibrating in the right way. So that is, to me, a really key thing with Nutripuncture. And we have a very simple association that allows us to guarantee that the cells are oscillating well. We sometimes call it the Joker, and it is yin-yang, the general nutritional cellular regulator, plus the conception and governor vessels, 33 and 34, the first meridian pathways which appear in the embryo, and the most steady and central of all the meridian pathways. And then two we call master of the heart and triple heater. There's 35 and 37 for a woman, and 36 and 38 for a man. And they are about regulating our limits in interacting with others and interacting with the environment, our ability to say no, to have proper limits inside of our bodies. And that means limits as well in terms of stress and how we are handling stress or feeling overwhelmed. So it restores us to feeling centered and having better limits, and it switches those cell membranes on. I like that very much, and that's very simple, very straightforward, very easy for people to use. The best feedback that I get from all associations is probably jet lag.
Oh, right.
So,
yes.
Of course, we live in Asia, and many people are traveling, and many people experience jet lag. And there's a lot of things that people try for jet lag, but pretty consistently, I hear from people when they do the jet lag association, it's like magic. They feel fantastic when they're traveling, no matter how far, how long, how many countries they're visiting. Jet lag makes a real difference for them. So jet lag is yin-yang, and it's 27 for the thyroid, which helps us to insert in current time. And then for a woman, we add the uterus, which is our anchor to the earth, and our location is number 28, or for a man, it's 21, the prostate. So we can be in current time, in current place, no matter where we are, no matter how frequently we're traveling.
Well, thank you very much, Keven, for sharing so much of your knowledge. It's fascinating to listen to you, and we're very happy to have you here, and thank you again.
Thank you for inviting me. I love Nutripuncture. I think it's a great system. I've worked with hundreds of people with it. I see extraordinary results and very consistent and excellent results. So I'm happy to share some of my experiences with you.
Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time with another edition of Meet the Practitioner.